I'm Phil Alexander.
I'm Ken Scott.
We're here at the KEF Sound Gallery, where there is a cornucopia of amazing David Bowie related material. There is an art exhibition that is, well, what can we say? It's Mick Rock at his finest. There is a whole load of sonic wonderment about to explode as well, including, Ken.
Well, I've been spending the last 2 years doing mixes of outtakes and things like that, which no one's heard before. And there's that. We'll be showcasing the Atmos mix of Ziggy, which comes out in September.
All in celebration, of course, of Rock and Roll Star, the brand new David Bowie box set. Some would say the finest David Bowie box set to date. What a lovely space this is. It deserves a round of applause in its own right, to be honest with you. Now, as you already know, I think the box set traces David's route through 1971 onto the creation of the classic 1972 record. Obviously, the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And it does so in great detail. 5 CDs, 1 Blu-ray disc, available digitally, I'm told, too, apparently. But the box is packed with really genuinely incredible material. 29 unreleased tracks. These kind of range from early demos up at Heathen Hall, where David and the soon-to-be Chris and Spiders from Mars were living, through to radio sessions and live performances, and a load of outtakes from the recording sessions at Trident that begat the Ziggy album. The Blu-ray also includes the definitive 2012 remaster of the Ziggy Stardust album, as well as Waiting for the Sky, in brackets, Before the Starman Came to Earth, which features an alternative running order of the album that dates back to November 71 and includes 4 tracks that didn't make the album itself. To say that this is probably the best David Bowie box set to date, I don't think is an understatement. So as far as the immersive experience goes, let me just tell you a bit about that though, because there are loads of different components. Most of them are downstairs actually, but around us you can see amazing Mick Rock artwork. There is some more of that downstairs, amazing photography. And as far as Mick is concerned as well, there is an unseen promo that dates back to 72 showing in what is known as the main hub. If you go down the stairs after we've done this bit of the evening, I really recommend you do that because you'll see that video, but there's plenty more stuff down there. I'm about to welcome to the stage a man who's going to transport us back to the time when Ziggy was made. He's also going to play us 4 unreleased tracks from the Rock and Roll Star box set itself, which he has mixed for your listening pleasure. And he's also obviously been instrumental in the Atmos mix of the original album, which he'll tell us more about shortly. He is a man with golden ears, and he's been responsible for making some of my favourite records of all time, and some of yours as well. Records by everyone from Elton John to the Mahavishnu Orchestra on to Supertramp, not forgetting, you know, Devo and the Tubes along the way. He began his studio life, I think in 1964, at the callow age of 16 at Abbey Road. And then he worked his way through the ranks to the point where he ended up working with the Beatles, of course. He first worked with Bowie in 1969, and then 2 years later, of course, he was at the helm of Hunky Dory, before beginning work on Ziggy in that very same year, 1971, at Trident Studios. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the one and only Mr. Ken Scott.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. You didn't tell me when we were discussing what we were going to talk about. You didn't tell me you were going to talk about me.
No, but I wouldn't.
I would have kept downstairs. I wouldn't hearing that.
I wouldn't normally talk about you, but you're here, so I kind of have to. Let's get straight into it because I've waffled on a long time, so it's your turn.
Yeah.
The sessions for Ziggy started November the 8th, 1971.
If you tell me.
What do you mean you don't remember? If we'd walked into Trident at that time, what would we have actually seen?
Well, walking through the front door, you'd see steps going down to the studio. You'd go to the right, you'd see a reception area, and you'd walk through that and go into the control room. And then downstairs, you'd see probably David playing acoustic guitar, Ronno possibly playing electric guitar, depending on how much spill there was in the mics and everything. Woody would be underneath the control room in the drum booth, playing away, and Trevor would be by the side of that, playing. And Obviously, Hunky Dory, we had Rick Wakeman on keyboards, on piano, so you'd have that. On Ziggy, it was just David and Rono. And then Aladdin Sane, it was Mike Garson. And it was interesting the way that the keyboards related to the music. Garson would never have worked for Hunky Dory. Rick would never have worked for Aladdin Sane. And David was amazing at being able to pick the right musicians to give him what he was after at any given time.
Yeah, of course, and that's something that he continued to do. Of course,
all the way through, yeah.
And it's interesting because the sessions, were quick, and you very much view you view Ziggy as almost, or you viewed it at the time as almost a continuation of Hunky Dory, didn't you?
I've often been asked about how quickly Ziggy was done after Hunky Dory, and yet it's such a completely different album. And one of the things that working on the outtakes brought forth to me was the massive grey area between the two, because we recorded Ziggy a few weeks, maybe a month after Hunky Dory. Hunky Dory hadn't even come out yet. I'm not even sure David had signed a record deal when we did Ziggy. But if you take some of the tracks, if you take Queen Bitch from Hunky Dory, that would have fitted perfectly into Ziggy. It Ain't Easy, we recorded that for Hunky Dory, just didn't fit in, kept it and put it onto Ziggy. And then some of the outtakes that I've mixed are far more acoustic, and we did those during the Ziggy period. So there's this vast overlap in material, and it was just the picking of the material that made one album different from the other. But just from the recording point of view, it just seamless between the two. Yeah,
of course. Now let's talk about your role with the Rock and Roll Star box set, because you've been at the helm of it. You've done a number of mixes. You've done some excavation, and obviously there's also the Atmos mix,
yes,
which I know we're in a high-end place full of really great speakers, but some of us don't know what an Atmos mix really is.
If you go to the movies, if you go to the cinema, you will be probably in what is now called an immersive situation, which is there are speakers all around, there are speakers above you, and you'll be watching Tom Cruise up there, and you'll hear a helicopter flying above your head. That's Atmos, devised by or developed by Dolby, and it slowly but surely is being brought into the music world. And it's slowly because, number one, it's expensive to set up at home. And number two, most people don't have the size rooms that it would work. It's getting better. It's getting better. But I approached the Atmos mix when finally we got the go-ahead to do it. I approached it very much. I'd heard other Atmos mixes where it was the stereo mix, the two-speaker mix, but just the instrumentation and all of that had just been put in different places. Otherwise, it was exactly the same, and that was boring. Plus, I'd done that with a 5.1, I have to say, back in 2000, 2003. And I wanted to, if we're going to go into some kind of immersive situation, make it that way. Don't just move the things around. So I went to Abbey Road #2, and I fed different instruments through and picked them up on different mics and all of that kind of thing, so that hopefully could use in the Atmos mix to make it feel more as if you're actually in the room. That worked out wonderfully thanks to Emre, my wonderful engineer on these mixings, that was a unique experience for me, because generally, as I started as an engineer, I've tended to keep doing that all the way along the line, even through production. I've always found it easier just to reach over and change what I'm going to change, rather than ask someone to do it and then, no, back off a bit. But mixing Atmos is a whole different ball game, and at 77, sorry, my learning curve ain't that fast. So I knew I had to work with someone. I met Emre, and that was it. I was sold immediately, just the way we talked, and it worked beautifully. It worked amazingly. I didn't have to tell him too much what to do, just every now and again.
But I will say this, so just so you're aware, like I said, there is an Atmos playback of the album downstairs. I would urge you to go and listen to it. And the reason I asked Ken about it really is because it is so phenomenal, and I think understanding the process that led to it is really important. Let's just talk very quickly before we play a track, because we have been yakking on for a bit longer than I thought we would be. But let's that's my fault. Let's move on to the first track we're going to play this evening. But in the wonderful book that comes with this, you say that this was a shock when I first heard it, this track. So introduce this track and then we'll talk about the shock of it.
First off, so much of it was a shock for me, just of the things, because I lived with Ziggy for 50 years. I knew the album so well. I had completely forgotten about all of these other songs that we recorded and the different versions of things. So when I pulled up Lady Stardust and there's David singing an octave below what it finished up being in the final mix or final recording, it just, whoa, it was weird, very strange.
Well, let's play that then. This is Lady Stardust. This is the take one version of it, apparently.
Oh, how I sighed when they asked if I knew his name, for he was all right. The band was all together, yes, he was all right. The song went on forever, and he was awful nice, really quite out of sight, and he sang all night long.
Now, I have to say that the complete professionalism of Mr. Bowie, Mr. Jones, just most people when they're doing a guide vocal, it will be, okay, first verse, okay, we're going into the first chorus, going into the second verse. He not only sings it almost perfectly all the way through, but does it an octave below just to make sure everyone's feeling it the way it should be. Just amazing.
It is an amazing version, actually. For those of you who are familiar with the original, you'll know exactly what Ken's talking about. But the piano in Trident is just bloody mind-blowing, isn't it? That piano.
It was, yes,
you know.
it was.
Let's talk about the excavation process, because I know it's very easy to talk about a box set and go, oh yeah, great, some unreleased tracks, blah, blah, blah. That's the end product. You're at the coalface doing the digging and the mining and talk us through what happens when you're faced with a project like this, where someone goes, right, here's some Ziggy tapes, can you sort them out? What happens?
I listened through to the tapes. And look, a lot of them, it's marked on the boxes, these titles. And I don't remember that one. I don't remember. And you go there and then you start to listen through to other bits. And I'm a fan, basically. I think that's why I've had the career that I've had. I make records for myself, not for other people. And in going through this, I knew fans would be interested in the outtakes and those kind of things, but I wanted to make it the way I would like to hear it. So they're not all exactly as they were recorded. I've done things like I've changed the drum sound, not any of the playing, but I added other drums along with Woody's drums, just to change the sound a bit, make them sound a little bit more modern, because the whole thing with Ziggy was very much the glam rock sound, and that was very, very dead drums. Well, that was back in the 70s. We're now a lot later than that, so I tarted them up a bit. And there are times when there was just, say, a single acoustic guitar, and, oh, that's boring. So I would go to another take of the same song, take an acoustic guitar from that, match it up so that the acoustic guitar could be double tracked, that kind of thing. So I've gone in and doctored a bit, but at the basis of all of that is the original recording of what they did, and as I say, I just tarted it up a bit. So that's what it came down. And that also goes for the Atmos mix. I went in and I changed the drum sound.
One of the other striking things about the tracks that are on the box, though, in terms of the unreleased tracks, is there's a lot of covers actually that are on there, and Round and Round by Chuck Berry,
yeah,
Amsterdam by Jacques Brel, Can't Explain by The Who, a
Well,
completely different
that's-
version. You weren't involved in that version at all, were
No,
you?
I wasn't. I didn't even know it had been recorded. And David had this weird thing. Now, of course, I can't explain. The version that's in the box set is very similar to the original by The Who. It's just very straightforward. But when we did it for pin-ups, if I remember correctly, we started off doing it the same way. And for some reason, somehow or another, we decided to slow the tape down, which took the pitch of the drums down, so they're a lot heavier than the rest of the drum kit on the album, and it just gave it this whole other feel, and that took the arrangement in a whole different direction when it was a lot slower. But David had this thing about recording songs again and again, normally his own songs. But as an example, there's a song by David called John, I'm Only Dancing, which we were talking, I think there are 4 different versions of it, and they're all almost identical. Why he would go in and record them again identically, who knows? Only David knew. But the strange thing is, originally I knew there was one, which was the one that I did at Trident. I found out that as we were recording during the day, John, I'm Only Dancing, they'd go to another studio in the evening and record John, I'm Only Dancing, exactly the same way. And I spoke to Woody about this. And he said, well, I only remember the Olympic one, which was the evening sessions. He had no recollection of the Trident one, which was during the day. But now, having gone back and found a 3rd version of it, he played on that one as well at Trident. And once again, it's exactly the same. So we've got all of these strange things that no one can quite remember, all of the different recordings.
Where is your version of that song?
I'm not sure which one it is, to be quite honest.
Well, there you go.
Because it's one of the 2 of the versions. One has violin along with Ronno playing the line, and the other one has saxes playing along with Ronno. And I honestly can't remember which one I did, whether it was the violin one or the sax one.
Right, shall we play another song? Because we're talking about covers, and there is this thing where everyone thinks Ziggy arrived fully formed, right? The concept arrived, it was all there and what have you, and we've ascertained already that it's slightly a continuation of Hunky Dory, but I think the next track we're going to play is an outtake from the Ziggy sessions, and it is really atypical. Do you want to introduce this, Ken?
I can't remember, which one is it?
Well, maybe I'll introduce it in that case. This is a track called It's Gonna Rain Again.
Oh.
Said the style I spent, said no, it was full of cocaine. So second to my easy chair, grooved around the market square. Everybody said I looked insane. It's gonna rain again. Gonna rain again.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Apparently it was recorded on 15th of November 1971, which is the same day as 5 years. And yet it sounds like that.
Yeah.
I mean, where was his head at when he was doing a tune like that? Because that kind of puts a lie to the idea that Ziggy is this ready-made concept. And I think, again, within the box, you can see David's exercise book where he's tracing almost the evolution of the concept. But where was his head at? Because it clearly means that it's like his friend and PI, Alan Edwards, said. He described David in his memoir recently as a nostalgic futurist, and that really is, that proves it.
Nostalgic, he goes back and he borrows from old hits like Alley Oop by the Hollywood Argyles, the B-side of that. He borrowed, on that one there's a line played by a baritone and a flute, and he loved that sound so much that that's what we emulated for the solo of Moon Age Daydream. So that was sort of bringing the past back into his
present.
future,
Yeah. So when you think back to that time and you look back at what he was trying to achieve, how did he present the material to you?
For Ziggy, it was just, we went in and did it. I didn't hear anything beforehand.
Right.
I had with Hunky Dory, I'd heard some heard demos. That because the whole thing with my agreeing to co-produce with David was based on My history, I was dropped in at the deep end. The first time I ever sat in front of a mixing console, first session I ever did, was for the Beatles. So I was, to put it mildly, shit scared. I didn't want that to happen again when I decided I wanted to move into production. Now, I'd done 2 albums with David as an engineer, and I thought he was a sweetheart of a guy. He was really nice. He had a certain amount of talent. He was never going to be a superstar. No, so when he says, will you co-produce with me? Sure, I can finally make mistakes and no one's ever going to hear them because the album won't sell.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it was about 3-4 weeks later that he and his wife and publisher came over to my house and we went through material. And it was probably the second demo we played me. The light bulb went off and it was, oh fuck me, it could be huge.
Yeah, and then you made Hunky Dory, and then you made Ziggy,
Yeah, right,
and then you went from there.
Yeah.
Let's move on and play another track, and it's the tune that really gives Rock and Roll Star its title. Just tell us a bit about this song and tell us about this version.
Well, it will show how David still didn't have lyrics together when we were recording, because this is, once again, a guide vocal, but it's very, well, I can't say very different lyrics, but certainly very different lyrics.
This is Star in that case.
Someone has to clean the sidewalk. Someone has to smoke the sky. I could make it all worthwhile as a rock and roll star. So enticing, so exciting to play the part. I could make a big time noise as a rock and roll star.
I always think that song is so underrated as a tune. It never gets a load of mentions when people talk about Ziggy, and yet, you know, that just, I don't know, it's like almost punk before punk.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on. We could talk through literally every track on this box that you've mixed.
Please,
but
no.
to be honest with you, we don't really have time, we'll get kicked out. But when you think back to that time, maybe let's think a little bit more broadly. When you think back to that time, as you said, you didn't, obviously Hunky Dory sets a standard. It hasn't come out yet. But when you were making Ziggy, how did you actually feel? I know it's a long time ago, but I'm sure that stays with you.
Well, the whole process, because David hadn't produced anything before, I hadn't, so it was a learning curve for us, and it was, I think, we both set off on Hunky Dory with a certain amount of trepidation. But as we started to sort of do things and they started to work and it sounded good, and that enabled us to push the envelope a bit more, kind of thing, and it just continued from there. We just gained confidence as we were going. You have to remember, they took 2 weeks to record. And unlike today's thing where it can take up to 3 years because no one will make a decision. But no, 2 weeks and it was over. We'd done it. So we had a lot of fun doing it. Nothing had come out yet, so we had no idea. We're sort of flying blind. We're making records that we like. We had no idea if anyone else would like them.
Yeah, and as I said, of course, it could have been a completely different album because the version that, you know, that originally was slated and finished. No Starman, no Suffragette City, no Rock and Roll Suicide.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I don't remember any version that didn't have those. Well, not Starman, that was a separate thing, because we handed in the album to RCA, the record company at the time, and they sent it back. They loved it, but no single. So we went in. David just happened to have this song up his sleeve, a song called Starman.
As you do.
Yeah, right, of course. Everyone
Well, we've got
has
to see, I've got Starman up
Yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah, come on.
Just pull it out. Okay, now let's do that one. We recorded that in 2 days and put it in place of Round and Round. We didn't even bother thinking about the running order. We just took Round and Round off and put Starman in, and it worked.
Look, we really could yak on all night, but I think we should play a final track as a bit of an outro. All that remains for me to do is to really thank everybody who's actually bothered to come down tonight. It's very kind of you to do that, to watch us yak on the stage, and obviously my thanks to Ken as well, and to...
hang on, just thank you. Just to bring you into this track, it's a song called Shadow Man, which is, I had no idea about this song. It is such an incredible song, but it's one of those that David tried different arrangements on it. This is very, very basic. It's acoustic guitars and the rhythm section and David, and an incredible song. And I was so pleased to be able to mix it. And having said that, that's what we're going to play. But I do urge you to go take a listen to some of the Atmos once we've finished here, because that's something I'm really proud of. And I like it.
It is a different experience, as I've said a couple of times already, but yeah, fantastic. Let's play Shadow Man, and then everyone can filter downstairs and, well, immerse yourselves.
And the shadow man is close at hand. Take a turn and deep a while, yeah, full of nothing but loneliness. Take a walk and be a friend to the shadow man, yeah.
Thanks very much, Ken Scott, and thanks to everyone here. Thanks as well.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
And also, huge thanks to Sarah and the entire KEF crew, as well as all the Warner's crew as well.
And Phil.
Thank you.